She's someone who has experienced so much in her life. She's experienced so much in her personal relationships. She's experienced so much as it pertains to her faith. She's experienced so much even when it comes to her social media presence. For anyone that is unfamiliar with, I don't even want to call you a guest because you did not refer to them as followers. You referred to them as friends. So that's how I'm going to refer to you today. So for anyone who is unfamiliar, I would like to introduce you to my friend, Lyndi Kennedy.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Stephen.
I appreciate it. There are so many different directions that I want to take this conversation. There is so much to your story that I really want to know, from having an Instagram platform with 300,000 followers that you recently lost, to navigating divorce, to navigating being a widow at such a young age, to coming out of Mormonism, to being in an abusive relationship. So my question is simply this: because there's so much to unpack with you that has brought you to your faith with Jesus and allowed you to commit yourself to him, where does your story begin? If somebody were to sit you down and say, Lyndi, tell me about who you are, where would you begin?
That's a good question because I don't know where to begin. Like, I'm writing a book, and in that process, I think, okay, do I start now with the recent events? Do I start when I was a child and tell the whole story from there? So that's a good question. I really just love to, I know who I am today and work backwards from that, because none of the things that happened in my life have are in vain, because they've all created who I am today and the woman that I am today, and I'm proud of who I am today, and I like who
Mm,
I am today. And you know I think I've always struggled with self-worth and things like that, and that's why I pursued like external validation and things like that, and centering my life around like boyfriends and husbands and things like that. And so now, Jesus Christ is the center of my entire world, and my life is centered around him. I lead a women's ministry, a Bible study. I, I'm an advocate against domestic violence, human trafficking, against, SA and mental health. I'm a big advocate against, working towards mental health and eradicating a lot of problems that lead to suicide and things like that. I really have a heart for preventing such a permanent decision for temporary feelings, because I've been there and I know how it is. And so
mm,
now I can speak to almost any hardship that people face in life. I can say I've been there with empathy, and I just want to help others see who they are and that they're made for so much more than that. So I named my ministry Made for More. Um, but yeah, and then all those things you named, we can go through each one. But yeah, then you can work backwards and say, yeah, I've done this, I've been through this and that, and this is what got me to here today.
mm, mm. So I want to make our conversation about Jesus. I want to make
Okay.
everything that we say about him, and I want to make sure that he gets the glory. And so let's begin with how you came to faith in him. Let's begin with what led you to the place where you decided that you were going to make the decision to surrender your life to him and follow him.
Okay, I love that you want to talk about Jesus. I love him. So he's my favorite person. So yeah, it was in 2020 that, as you know, the world was just in complete chaos. And I don't
Mhm.
care which side you're on, left, right, red, blue, there was just chaos. And everyone was like so hateful towards each other. And there was so much just animosity towards family and friends and social media. And I'm someone that they call like empathic and sensitive. So for me, I felt it in my body, and it was really hard for me. It was a really scary time as a mother to think, wow, I've got three children in this world. What's happening here? Right.
Mm,
I was in a relationship that was very, very abusive. And for many reasons that I could go into, if you want to talk, that's a separate subject, about coercive control and trauma bonds, and all
mm,
the ways that they abuse, from financial abuse to psychological abuse, where you get kind of trapped in this invisible prison. But so for now, for this conversation, I was kind of trapped in a way for, and my kids and I, we all lived together. So I became very sick. I was diagnosed with 14 different illnesses. I went from no illnesses to being in and out of the hospital 5 times in a year, and diagnosed with 14 different illnesses, four of them autoimmune disease. I felt like I was dying every day. It was horrific. And I wanted some kind of, I knew I needed God in my life. And I was living with no values, no morals, no God, no spirituality in my life. I was doing a little new age stuff because after I found out the Mormon church wasn't true, I thought, well, I don't need any religion in my life then. You know, and so
Right.
I was down like a little new agey stuff. I like just the spirit, the consciousness, the human collective is kind of what I was like. It's just
Hmm.
love, right? And it is love.
Uh-huh.
So that's part's true. But I knew I needed God. And so I just called out to him and I said, listen, I don't know who you are, if you're Catholic or Buddhist or Jehovah Witness, or I don't know who you are, Seventh Day Adventist. If are you, I was like, what kind of God? Who are you? I don't know who to pray to, but I need you. Whoever you are, just show
Mm.
me. And so he just kind of led me as a little child to read the Bible, peel off those layers that I had, all the belief systems that I had had decades of. I had to deprogram myself from. And I did. I started all over and I just started reading the Bible and praying. No church, no religion, just him and I.
Mm.
And that's where I developed my relationship with him. And then I called a girlfriend of mine who I knew was a Christian. And she was very outspoken, Christian, and strong in her faith. And I called her and I said, can I go to church with you? And she's like, of course, Lyndi. So the next Sunday, I went to church with her. And then she invited me into a Bible study in her home. And I went to that. And then it just led one thing to another.
Mm. I find that absolutely fascinating because, and I love hearing other people's stories, especially considering I grew up in the church. I grew up in a pastor's home. I attended and
Oh, you
graduated from
did?
Bible college. I did, yeah. So
Okay.
my
So this was
story.
always part of your, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, it was well, let me rephrase that. So, as much as I would love to say that even though I grew up in the church, I always knew who he was and I always had a relationship with him, that isn't the truth. I'd be lying if I said that growing up in the church automatically meant that I had a relationship with him. Honestly, I really don't think I started wrestling with the idea and understanding of who he was until I was an adult. And really, I always knew who he was intellectually. I always knew him as the God of the Bible. I always knew of Jesus Christ. I knew that he died for our sins. I knew about the Holy Spirit. I knew about all of this, but I didn't experience it. And it wasn't until
Right. You didn't have an
really,
encounter with it.
mm-mm, no,
Okay.
and that's why I so appreciate your story is because you found yourself in a place where you were searching. You found yourself in a place of desperation. And I think that's where our stories can kind of link and where our stories can kind of be united because I found myself in that particular place because of things that I had gone through. Experiencing, you talked about 2020. I stood by my father's hospital bed in 2021 during the height of the pandemic and watched him pass away. And 2 years later,
I'm sorry.
well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's almost 5 years. Um, so it's definitely an interesting story to tell. Um, 2 years after that, I would experience divorce after a 15-year marriage. And so I would really say it wasn't until I was further along in my journey, I was much older that I really started understanding, okay, like you, if you're real, if what I've read, if what I've heard my whole life is real, then I need you to show me who you are. I need you to
Yeah.
reveal who you are. And that's what he did. And he continues to show me who I am. He continues to show me my worth and my value, and that my identity is found in him. My identity is not found in the approval, the applause, the accolades of anyone else. In the age of social media, it's very easy to get caught up in followers,
Right.
or as you call them, friends. It's very easy to get caught up in that. And it's very easy to find validation in that. And so, what I can't help but wonder, and you mentioned this earlier on, working our way backwards, what I can't help but wonder is it's 2 weeks ago. You may or may not have been preparing for a move. and you have this tremendous platform on Instagram, and all of a sudden, almost overnight, I would love to know the story of what happened where you had spent so much time, effort, and energy having this type of a platform. Some people might view that as an identity crisis. Some people might be completely destroyed because of that, because you've invested so much in it. So, what was that experience like as far as having that many friends and then losing them?
Well, I have to say, this is why I love what Jesus has done in my life so much because the old Lindy, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, would have probably been devastated by it, like just crying over it. This is my whole life. I'm an influencer and I'm a fashion blogger, is what we used to call them. And these are all my followers that I worked so hard for and everything. Jesus has just given me my identity through Christ and who I am through Him and the trust I have in him that he will rebuild me, he will restore, he will redeem. I trust him. And if he wants me to get it back, I will. If he doesn't and he wants to rebuild me from start to finish, okay, I trust him. But I teach Bible study every Friday morning on Zoom. I do an online Bible study and it's women all over Canada and the US. I've been doing this for 2.5 years. And I hang up our Bible study Friday morning. This is 2 weeks ago. And I go to like tap on the Instagram button on my phone and just kind of check if there's notifications or something. And it just the first thing that pops up is your Instagram has been disabled. And I thought, what? Like why? Because I was talking about conspiracy theories or something. I was talking about the government. I don't know. And I was talking about like, Spencer Pratt and this LA run. And I just thought
Hmm.
I just don't know what it was or I don't know. And so they didn't give me a reason. And so I put in an appeal and the appeal said, no, it's permanent. And I said, well, why? You have to give me information. And then they said, you'll get an email within 30 days telling you why. And I haven't gotten that. So it's really strange. I have a lot of kind people reaching out to people they know that work for Meta or a hacker or somebody that can get it back. And a lot of
Mm.
them are actually quite expensive and it's not guaranteed. So I'm not sure. And I've been praying. I actually fasted about it. Like, should I spend this kind of money and then it not even be guaranteed, or it goes back up and it goes back down after you spent that money and they don't refund it because it did come back? It could go back down. And I'm just not sure. Part of me really feels this piece that God wants to kind of take away my old identity and wash that clean and start over and build me his
Mm.
way. Because even though I did spend 12 years on that and did build a lot of beautiful friendships and connections over the years and a lot of opportunities it gave me. And I've shared my testimony on there. I lead a women's ministry. I have these women's retreats. 90% of the people, some of them are my friends already in real life, but a lot of them are people that I know through Instagram. So for it to all be gone is devastating. It's how I provide an income. I support my family. I'm a single mom. So it's pay my rent and car payment and groceries and things like that. It's from the things I do on Instagram. And so that was pretty devastating. But it is
Mm.
interesting because I actually started an onboarding process, an interview process with a new job and it fell into my lap and it was an opportunity that was given to me that didn't ask for and it has been going on over the last like month and a half and it's
Mm.
so interesting to me because I would be crying and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be homeless. I lost my entire income and job from Instagram, but I know I have this job now. So maybe God knew, and the things he sees that we don't see, the things he hears and knows that we don't. He's in rooms and hears conversations that we don't. So maybe
Mhm.
he knew this was happening and he was preparing me for it with this new job that I'm doing. And it's a great job and it has longevity. It's a more sophisticated sale and it provides probably a better income and benefits and 401k when I don't have that with Instagram, right? So I
Right.
don't know. And maybe I don't know the answer. And there are people that are telling me they can get it back. It's not successful so far. We'll see. And I'm just taking it one day at a time, but it's not easy. And I'm just trusting him.
You spoke about something that is sometimes so difficult to come by, and it's what you talked about, this peace. And a lot of people are chasing after peace, but they're pursuing it in the wrong way. And I know I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of thinking that I could find peace in relationships, guilty of trying to find peace in environments and situations and circumstances. This platform goes down seemingly without any warning, without any explanation, no notice whatsoever. You experience this peace as a result of it. My question is, if the platform never goes up, if you never get those 300,000 friends back, and all you're left with is the platform that you and I connected on recently, what is it that you would want to use that platform for? What is it that you feel God has called you to do with this new platform? If, as you mentioned, He essentially gave you a clean slate, washed the old identity, washed all of those things away to give you a new start. What is it that you would hope to do with that new start?
That question. I will do whatever God wants me to do with it. It's his platform, not mine. But yeah, every connection on there is his, not mine. So every bit of it I'll give to him, and I ask him to order my steps and, be a lamp at my feet every day. And so every decision I make is with God now. And I do, like I said, have some opportunities to do some public speaking and write a book and even possibly a television show coming up. And so
Mm,
I will be able to use that to share what God's done for me in my life and help other survivors of domestic violence, stalking, SA, and mental health issues. And so I'm excited to be able to do that and really mostly is share my testimony and what God's done in my life because he's changed me like that like having peace with my Instagram. I wouldn't have that if it weren't for Jesus. I'd be a wreck probably. But because of
right.
him, I'm like, it's okay. I just give it to him. I lay it at his feet. And anything that happens in my life, I lay it at his feet and I go to him. And I know that he'll use this to do what he wants, but I also he's provided an income with a different job. So my day job, I'll call it. so
Yeah.
um and maybe I'll moonlight as an influencer still. Maybe I won't. I'll just take it one day at a time.
I think you have a unique advantage because of everything that you've been through. You almost have a clean slate to now talk about a lot of things that don't get much traction, right? Especially in the church. Their mental health is not something that's really talked about in the church today.
Not enough.
Abuse.
It's not.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. No. Like I said, growing up in the church, being a pastor's kid, Bible college, all of that, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that people actually from the pulpit talked about mental health. And yet, when you're on social media, when you're on Instagram, there's a lot of these topics that I see over and over and over again. Mental health is one of them, divorce is another one. I just had a conversation earlier today with someone whose whole platform is centered around narcissistic abuse and surviving
Mhm.
that. And you have such a unique opportunity to share your own experience. And so that's where I want to take the conversation next because I want to really understand. I know this came post divorce and we'll get into the divorce, but I really want to build on this topic of what you experienced because you described it as, I believe, a 6-year period of time.
Right, because I tried breaking up with him after the first time I left, I think was about a year and a half after we started dating. And what's interesting is when I sat down with my counselor at the women's shelter, the first thing she said is, how many times have you broken up or gotten back together? And I said, it's been about 8 or 9 times, I think, that we broke up and got back together. And she kind of smiles and she says, did you know that the typical abusive relationship, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence relationship, the victim and abuser break up about 7 to 9 times? And I said, no, I didn't know that. So,
Wow.
yeah. And so in that time, I would leave and then he'd, pull me back in or threaten me and extort me over the next couple of years. And then I would leave, get my own place, move out and really try to just give my life start over again. Like, I'd fall off track even with Jesus for a while because he'd pull me back in. And then I'm like, no, no, I'm going back. And then, he'd extort me over things that he had. Because one of
Um,
the things he did why he went to jail was he posted nude photos of me and he would hold those against me. He threatened to harm me and my kids and even my dog. And and he threatened
Mhm.
to post these photos and everything, and he's been doing that for years. And so, yeah, so he would threaten that, and I was so scared at the time, and just yeah. So,
Mm.
so I would kind of go back to him or just try to appease him, right? Like I just be nice and play nice just to see if we could keep calm the waters a little bit. And then he's very explosive. He was an alcoholic. He's an addict, and so it just depended on and he was bipolar, and so these episodes would go up and down, and he'd be so overly loving and love bomb me again, right? And then pull me back in and then get really like abusive. And it was a cycle that was really destructive. And so finally I knew I had to put it all to a stop completely. Go no contact. That's the only way to deal with someone like that is no contact. So I did do that. But he would break into my home. He broke into my home multiple times and assaulted me, and so it finally got to a point where the law had to really step in and it got really
First of all, I can't imagine what it is like going through all of that. So my heart goes out to you. Like you said, that empathetic part of you, that empathetic part of me really resonates with that because I don't think anybody should have to endure that. I don't think anybody should have to deal with all of that. And yet what I'm finding is it's more common than what we are actually
yeah.
aware of. And but one of the questions that I can't help but ask just regarding that, because I had these conversations so much, especially recently, is what was it that actually prompted you? What was the final straw, the final event that happened where you made the decision that, you know what, I need to do what's best for me. I need to do what's best for my kids. I need to go no contact. I need to completely sever this tie? What was it that ultimately led you to make that final decision?
It's funny because you would think the final straw, and would be when he would put his hands on me. And you would think that strangling me and hurting me and giving me a fat lip, elbowing me in the face or a black eye and pulling my hair and all these horrible things he did, you would think those would be the final straw. And they would be, I would leave, but he would always pull me back in. And it's crazy though that the final straw that I finally, because I was so deep in a trauma bond and the cognitive dissonance is real with narcissistic abuse. And your brain
Mhm,
can't really, with cognitive dissonance, your brain can't hold two truths at once. And so it's like, he loves me, he clearly hates me. And so it goes with the one that resonates with your own nervous system, your own childhood blueprint of which one keeps you safe. It's survival. So we're all wired for survival. And your brain will kind of almost like short circuit and hold on to the one that keeps you safe, not the one that's more true than the other, the one that keeps you safe.
mhm,
So that's where you kind of hold on to the one that, like, being with him and he loves me keeps me safe right now. And the one that finally broke me through and started me to see who he was and stop believing his lies. It's kind of funny because it's not as crazy as some of these other things, but he was bullying me from Instagram. Did you ever see that Netflix documentary where the mother was bullying her daughter, like texting her creepy things, and it was
mm-mm,
called Unknown Caller or Unknown
mm-mm,
yeah, so the mother, it was really horrible. This daughter was being bullied, cyber bullied, and from text messages and online. And the daughter, it kind of led her to nearly taking her own life and depression and anxiety. And she was being bullied. And they found out it was her own mother. And she was doing it to the girl's boyfriend too. It was horrible. But it reminded me of my situation. So I was getting like online bullied, getting these horrible mean DMs on my Instagram. And I just thought, like, is this a horrible person out there that just hates me for whatever reason? I don't even know them. And I used to be a lot more sensitive. Now everything I've been through, I'm like, it's okay. Like I can give it to God. But because clearly anybody that would behave that way is not okay. So, and now
mhm,
I know that. But back then, like a couple of years ago, I'd be like, why is this person being so mean and saying these mean things to me? And it turned out to be him. Just like that
mhm,
documentary, same thing. It was him. And I started to put two and two together because of things he would get so drunk that I think he didn't realize that he was like showing like the video that like this one night I was at this private concert that had Nelly performing and I didn't post it on social media, nothing, but I sent it to him and then he sent me a DM from a fake thing saying, "Oh, you say you're Christian, but you're out partying with Nelly." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, I'm not partying." But anyway, he's the only
mhm,
person that knew that. And then I started to put together the other mean messages I was getting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they were all him. And
Mm,
the synchronicities in them, and he got caught a couple other times, but I still couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd be like, wait, that person sent you this, that same person sent me something mean. And it was like this person saying, oh, you and Lyndie should get back together. You guys are the most beautiful couple. And he'd show it to me to get me to kind of come back. And I'm like, well, that's weird because that same account wrote me some really mean, nasty things. So, and then it put it
uh,
all together. And he wasn't very bright, or he'd just be so drunk that he'd forget. And so I started to, he's a little messy. He was a messy criminal. When I
wow.
finally realized that that was him sending me those messages, for some weird reason, that's what really just kind of like shattered my cognitive dissonance. And that's what really shattered this illusion, the fantasy world that they bring. So narcissists bring you into a fantasy world, and then you come
Mhm,
live in it with them and you get stuck in it. So that's what finally shattered that fantasy world and broke me out of it and saw him for who he really was.
mm,
After all the horrible things he did, that's what finally made me go, this person is
mm.
someone that says they love you, and then they're writing you these horrible messages, but then texting you nice things. And at the same,
Yeah.
like within 5 minutes of that, they're DMing you basically things that would make someone want to go like, cry in a pillow. But then on their phone, they're texting you nice things. And I'm like, this person
Mhm.
is diabolical. So
Yeah.
that's what finally helped me see it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's where we get into the conversation of trauma bond, but you also get into the concept of love bombing and gaslighting and how they 9 out of 10 times they work together. Sometimes the person that professes that they love you the most can also in the next breath profess that they hate you the most. And the person that professes to want to give you the world is the person that can also seemingly take the world away from you and
Yeah.
almost show no remorse. I've been there. I've been through the verbal abuse. I've been through the emotional abuse. I've been through the mental abuse. I've even been through the physical abuse, which is crazy
Oh,
because
wow.
most conversations about abuse center around women being abused, and rightfully so, because I'm sure the numbers are probably much higher for women than is for men. But I know what it was like for me. And it's interesting because they always found a way to control. They always found a way to manipulate. They always found a way to bring you back. And it was essentially that trauma bond, which I didn't fully understand until I came out of the relationship and so many things were weaponized from.
Right. Everything is weaponized.
Mhm, mhm, and I remember making the decision to come out from that relationship. It was probably one of the hardest things that I ever had to do because there was parts of me that regretted it right afterward, and there were parts of me that I shamed myself, I gaslit myself, I asked myself, "Did I do the right thing?" I thought about going back, and ultimately, I made the decision where if it costs me my mental health, if it costs me my emotional safety, if it costs me my inner peace, it's not worth it. It's too
Amen.
expensive. And so I would also add another thing to that. If it jeopardizes or calls me to compromise my relationship with Jesus, then it's too much. It's too nothing on this earth is worth my relationship with him. No earthly relationship here should ever pull me away from him. If anything, it should have the opposite effect. And that's where I really want to go is because I heard it said the wrong man will show you that you can do everything by yourself.
I
The
love that
right
quote. Yeah.
so then you know where I'm going. The right man knows that you can do everything by yourself, but won't let you. It would be very easy for me to say that the right man is an earthly man made of flesh and blood and maybe has brown hair and blue eyes, whatever it may be. But the right man is seated at the right hand of the Father and he is making intercession for you. So, in light of that quote, so how has he shown you that, especially as a single mom, because as a single mom, you have to wear both roles. You have to wear the potentially the masculine role in some way. You got to wear the feminine role. You got to be mom in one say. You got to be dad in another one. So you're playing both roles. So in light of all of that, how has he, Jesus, shown you that you don't have to do everything on your own? You don't have to do everything by yourself because he's with you, helping you through everything that you're going through.
It's so beautiful. This is why I love being a follower of Jesus Christ because just like you said, he's shown me I'm your husband, you know, and I'm your provider and I'm your protector. So when I've even prayed, like, God, please send me a godly man to marry, and bring me my Boaz and all those things, he's always reminding me, Lindy, I'm your husband right now,
Mm,
and I'm all you need. I'm all your kids need. And so I am your protector. I'm your provider. I'm your husband. And I know that that hasn't happened for me yet because he wants me to learn to fully depend on him and him only. And I
mm,
believe I take full accountability that I a little in a way, and it has a lot to do, it's still my responsibility, but how I was raised and everything is I definitely idolized men and or not men so much, but like a husband. So
mm,
I had an idol worship of a husband and being complete kind of and being fulfilled and whole. And I'm happy if I have a husband and God had to show me that no, I'm your center. I'm your husband. I'm your protector. I'm your provider. I'm everything that you need. And then that can come into your life when it's a beautiful marriage between the three of us, with me at the center. And so
mm,
that's totally changed my perspective on dating and on, men and marriage and everything. And so and as a single mom, it is hard. And I do want to say that they do have a dad. Like the kids do have a dad. He's a good dad, and we're in a great place as co-parents. So that's good. And my youngest son right
mm,
now, they play baseball every day together, and he thinks his dad hung the moon. So it's a good place for a boy to be, and I want that for my kids. But it's not easy as a woman. Like you don't always feel like you have that support that you need, and it's a struggle in every way to try and manage work and friendships and a social life, a dating life, your children, things go wrong or you need things fixed on your car or your home or whatever. And sometimes you're like, I just want a man to help me with those things. But
mm,
God's showing me right now how to fully lean on him completely. And I know he's doing that before, he does bring a Boaz into my life. So, yeah.
mm.
And it's so cool the
The-
things he does do. There's so many times where he's lifted me up off that floor, crying
mm,
or giving me the strength I need. And really being able to give my children to him too, because as a mom, when you end up having a relationship with Christ and your life changes like mine has for the better. Oh my gosh, all I want is
mm,
for my three boys to have it, right? It's like
yeah,
if you have the best ice cream you've ever eaten and you're like, oh my gosh, Linda, you have to try this ice cream because it's so good. For me, I'm like, you need Jesus. And so I want my kids to have it because I love them more than anything in this whole world. And I want them
yeah.
to have Jesus to get them through everything in their lives. And I just know how much better their lives will be with it. And so
Mm,
I pray for them every day. And I've seen two out of the three give their lives to Jesus and love him and follow
wow,
him. And,
wow.
and I know every day it'll just get better and better. So
That has to make you proud that 2 of the 3
so proud.
have
Yeah.
made that decision because it's almost like a testament that you've done something right, that you even in the midst of everything that you've gone through, even in the midst of everything that they've gone through, that they've witnessed, that they've experienced, because we can't forget that they've been a part of your
Oh,
story as
yes.
well.
I know.
And I know you know that, and I know you're aware of that, but anybody that hears your story, there are 3 other lives that have been impacted by it, and to hear that 2 of the 3 have made the decision to serve him in light of all that, that's a testament to you. That is a
I know. So
testimony
grateful.
of you and the role that you played as their mom, because in spite of everything that you've gone through, you've still been able to be that godly example. You've still been able to be that Esther for such a time as this, that you were able to stand up in the midst of what the enemy meant for evil, and what the enemy meant for evil in a lot of what you've experienced. You've stood up as an Esther for such a time as this. Now you've been able to watch that. And I can't imagine what that's like for anybody that does not know. Lindy referenced Boaz. And I know there's a Netflix movie that's called Boaz. I believe it's called Boaz.
Oh,
And I've seen it. It is. Yeah, if you
should I
go on
watch it? I didn't know
Netflix,
about that.
yes, there is a movie that is called, I believe it's called Boaz, and it's a modern day. Think of it as the Leonardo DiCaprio version of Shakespeare's play. I'm trying
Romeo
to
and
remember.
Juliet. It was
That's
so
it.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, so the same way that they did kind of like Romeo and Juliet, this is a modern day telling of the story of Ruth and Boaz. And so for anyone that doesn't know, so Ruth was married. Ruth had a mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law and her husband, they had two sons. They were from the town of Bethlehem in the land of Israel, and there was a famine that struck the land. And so, mother, father, both sons ended up going into Moab. And while in the land of Moab, both of those sons would find women and would marry them. One of those women would be Ruth, the other one would be Orpah. But in the course of time, not only would Malon, who was the father, die, but also both sons would die as well. And so here you have three women that all became widows, pretty much in connection with each other. They pretty much experienced that traumatic event at the same time. Naomi is the mother in law, made the decision to go from Moab back to Bethlehem because she heard a report that there was bread in the land once more. She tells her daughters, stay here. Can I give you more sons? And even if I was able to bear more sons, would you wait until they're older and marry them? And Ruth makes an incredible declaration. She says, where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. And what most people don't realize about Boaz is Boaz made the decision to be a kinsman redeemer. And he chose to love this woman in spite of her brokenness, in spite of even not being a Jewish woman. He chose to love her anyway. And so if anybody listens to this conversation, when Lyndi talks about her wanting to find a Boaz, it is this quality of man that is willing to love you in spite of your brokenness or in spite of your testimony, love you in spite of your flaws, love you in spite of your weaknesses, being willing to take on the responsibility that you carry, being willing to look at the burdens that you carry and is actually able to take them. And just to give one more thing about Boaz is Boaz and Ruth would end up getting married. They would have a son. Their son's name was Obed. Obed would be married, would have a son. His name was Jesse. Jesse would have another son, and his son was David. And David was the king of Israel. So when she
Who
speaks
led to
about
the lineage
Boaz,
of Jesus.
so here, this decision that Ruth made to leave everything that she knew in order to follow a God that she perhaps didn't know, this decision that Boaz would make to love a woman in spite of her past and her brokenness would contribute to the lineage of Jesus. And that is why, even to this day, he is not only known as Jesus, but he's known as the son of David, and he will sit on David's throne. You said something about Boaz and you referenced waiting for God to bring you your Boaz. But the truth of the matter is you've been married before. You've had an earthly husband before. You've experienced divorce. So I can't help but wonder what that was like, what it was like when you had an earthly husband and having a marriage that would eventually end up in divorce.
Yeah. And I've been widowed like Ruth. So,
Mm,
so I just always kind of love that story. It's such a beautiful love story, the story of Boaz and Ruth. I feel like, she
yeah.
felt so beaten down and everything. And then he came in and restored and redeemed in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And her faithfulness and her loyalty to Naomi. And then even Naomi got to be restored too because she got her grandson. I'm like gonna cry
Uh-huh.
about this story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but also I've heard before, I feel that the story of Boaz and Ruth is also kind of a story of Jesus and the church. So we're all kind of the Ruth and he is our redeemer and restorer. He's all of our Boaz kind of. So
Mhm.
I love that.
Yep.
But yeah, so being married was something I grew up Mormon. And so as we talked about a little bit, and not by anybody's fault, but just traditionally and culture wise and watching Disney movies probably. But I grew up, my whole identity was you're going to grow up to be somebody's wife and my mother of many children, probably. The more you have, it's really hard to explain. And I think Catholics will get this too, but it was like almost like the more kids you have, the higher up in the church you'll be, or another star on your crown you'll get, or something. But it's like you're a better Mormon the more kids you have, and the better mom you
Mm.
are, and the more you sacrifice, and the more casseroles you bake. And so But I grew up and, pushing little dolls around in strollers, babysitting all the time, and I just could not wait to be a wife and a mom. I was so excited. That was my identity. I didn't know that I should really have my own identity. And so I got married very young. I was 21 and I was so excited to start a family. Pretty sure I got pregnant on my honeymoon my first night. So
Mm,
I'm 3 months pregnant and I wake up next to my husband. I'm about to throw up. I feel nauseous. And I said, can you get me some saltines or something, a bowl? I'm going to throw up. And I could immediately feel the touch of his skin was like cold. And so something wasn't right. And he clearly was not um, living. And so I called 911 and that happened. So I now am pregnant and alone, and all my dreams kind of come crashing down. Like I was so excited. And so I went on to keep living, working, going back to school. I went to cosmetology school and working two jobs. And I'm raising this little baby and thinking every day, looking at this baby, like he's not going to know his dad. Is he going to be okay? And the pain and the
mm,
guilt I felt and wondering just, is he going to be okay? I was so stressed about that. I meet this, oh, I think I lost you. Oh, there you are. So I'm out waitressing and I meet a guy who starts talking to me and I'm kind of blowing him off because I'm busy working and raising a little kid and back in school and working two jobs. So I'm not really that interested. But he pursues and continues and finally says, well, why don't you bring your son and come to a baseball game? And I said, oh, yeah, I'm not really that into baseball. And he's like,
mm,
come on, I play. Like, come watch me play. And I was like, play for the Angels? And he's like, yeah, I play for the Angels. And, I go back and I tell my friends, and they're like, Lyndi, you should probably go. So I call, I
mm,
don't know, like a month or two later, I finally call and I go, okay. And he was like, oh, I didn't think you were going to call. So I did. I go to his Angels game with some friends and we start from there immediately dating and get engaged and we have two more beautiful boys together, so we have three boys. And divorce was not something I ever really even thought about. I thought once you get married it's forever. I never even thought about divorce. To be honest with you, I really didn't know much about cheating and affairs. Very naive, and thought that those kinds of things only happened like on a movie or something. I really thought that if you just said you love someone and you're faithful to them, you just are. I had a very naive juvenile mindset, I think. I just, for whatever reason. And
mm,
so I just took it for face value and thought when he wasn't coming home at night and was treating me a little differently. And I had friends say, Lyndi, you need to check his phone bills. We need to go follow him, like all those things.
mm,
And I thought, oh, no, no, he would never do that to me. He loves me. And, they had to knock some sense into me like, Lyndi, come on. So we ended up finding out that he was in fact playing around and it was devastating. I remember just laying on the floor like I couldn't get up. I just thought like my heart was broken and I just couldn't understand it. And so he ended up fighting for me back. We work it out and I think, oh, it's going to be better than before because he realized what he lost and, hurting me and he never wants to do that again. And he did it again. And so, yeah, so then I
mm,
knew I had no choice, but I had to leave. And so I did. And we divorced. And then when I started dating, that he couldn't handle that. So he begged for me back and asked me to go marry him in the courthouse and get married again. So we married twice. And
wow.
then just tired of a lot of his ways. I don't want to talk too bad about him because he is the father of my kids and we get along well, but just tired of his ways. And he was not a good husband.
Mm,
So I divorced finally. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to go marry the man of my dreams. Now that this is it for me. Like I'm going to have everything I want in this life. And I really thought that. And then I
mm,
ended up getting into something worse than I could ever imagine.
mm,
But divorce was my biggest heartbreak. I think in romantic relationships, I woke up next to my dead husband. I've been through just pure evil in domestic violence. And that the heartbreak of a man cheat, like the man I loved, and we had a family, we had Christmas mornings, and that's what I
mm,
wanted. That being broken, that's my biggest heartbreak, though.
mm. There's something that is a part of your story that is also part of my story. So I was married. Let me backtrack. I was engaged when I was 21 and I was finishing Bible college. And I remember being engaged when I graduated from Bible college. That relationship ended. And that was back in 2001. Fast forward 2008. Or no, I'm sorry, that was 2005. Fast forward a couple years later, and I found myself getting married. And I was married for 15 years. And in that relationship, no one gets married and no one says I do with the expectation that you're eventually going to say I can't or I
Yeah.
won't or I don't. No one gets married thinking that you're going to get divorced. Most people, especially for me growing up in the church, divorce was such a fringe topic that you were almost considered an outlier. You were marginalized if you
Yeah,
were
I thought affairs and
divorced.
divorce were like for those I don't know, the very small group of people. I really did. So you're probably like me in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and it was, and I remember walking through it, and it was a difficult season. It was a difficult experience. It was something that was hard for me to walk through, especially considering it came on the heels of losing my dad. Fast forward a couple years later, and I meet someone else, and Lyndi, I think she is the woman of my dreams. I think that this is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. I think this is my second chance. This is my redemption story. I think this is the woman that we are going to be able to go into ministry with together. We talked about hosting a podcast together. We talked about getting into coaching and providing marriage counseling and marriage coaching and writing books and all of these different things. And I thought it was going to be the greatest thing. And I really viewed it as my second chance. And so we end up getting married. And it was great for probably a couple of weeks before
Oh,
everything really started happening. I moved cross country. I don't have kids of my own, and so I moved cross country because I was able to do it. She has kids, she
well,
couldn't
she had
relocate.
kids.
Yeah, she had kids and I was willing to be a husband to her. I was willing to be a stepfather to her kids. I viewed it gladly, but eventually things just started to take place. All of the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, the mental abuse, eventually it became physical abuse to where I made the decision to leave. And so I understand what you're saying about, you know what, I thought this was going to be my second chance. I thought we were going to have a beautiful life together. And what do you do when you feel like you get a second chance at life and you think that your new lease on life is going to be beautiful,
Yeah.
only to find it seemingly stripped from you, and you find yourself in a place where you're like, I did not think this. And you said something earlier, and you said pregnant and alone after your first husband had passed away. And there's another story for anyone that is unfamiliar with this story. This is probably the greatest name of God in the scripture. There was another woman who was pregnant. And when it was discovered that she was pregnant, she began to be mistreated. She began to experience scorn and ridicule and rejection and disrespect. And as a result, she was driven out from the house that she had lived in, and she found herself in the middle of a desert. She found herself in a wilderness, alone, abandoned, and afraid, pregnant, unsure of what her future was going to hold. Was she going to give birth to this son? Was her life going to be completely over because of what she had gone through? And there in the middle of the desert, as she was alone, as she was abandoned and afraid, the angel of the Lord appeared to her and revealed one of the greatest names in all of Scripture, and that is El Roi. El Roi, for anyone that does not know, it simply means the God who sees. Hagar was in the wilderness, and yet God showed up in the midst of everything that she had been through and says, I see you. I see you in your loneliness. I see you in your fear. I see you in your abandonment. And yet, what I'm going to do is, I am going to take your son that you thought you were going to lose. I'm going to make him a great nation. And it's interesting when you look at her because she was Egyptian. She was not what we would call Jewish. She was an Egyptian mistress. She was an Egyptian handmaid. And yet, God revealed himself to her as the God who sees. And it's one of the greatest names that I have ever seen in all of scripture.
That's
And when I
such a
hear,
great reminder. Yeah.
Well, because I can't help but see that even in the midst of you, and as soon as you said pregnant and alone, all I could think of is Hagar, and that
Yeah.
even when you were pregnant and alone, he still saw you. Even when you were going through your divorce and you were walking through the waters of adultery and an affair, he still saw you. Even when you were walking through the abuse. It's interesting. You felt alone and maybe even afraid when you were pregnant after your first husband. You had to deal with adultery and an affair from your second husband. You get out of that, and now all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of a relationship that is nothing short of abusive. That's the only way. And yet, in the midst of it all, I can't help but see that God saw you and was there every step of the way. And it's almost like that name has been over your life your whole life. It's almost like now you're beginning to understand, you know what? Even though the road wasn't easy, even though it was difficult, even though I've been through some things, I know that he saw me. I know that he was aware of what I've been through. And this is why I love what is said about Jesus. It says of Jesus that we do not have a high priest who cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. And I like that the Bible uses the word feeling. It doesn't just say that he knows what we've gone through, but he knows the feelings that are associated with it. He knows the loneliness, he knows the fear, he knows the anxiety, he knows the doubt. He knows all of these different things. He knows what you experienced with each of these relationships. And now he is your husband and he's preparing you for that moment when he does bring you your Boaz and he does bring you that godly man. He does bring you that man that is going to lead you the way that you want to be led and love you the way that you want to be loved and be a good godly influence for your kids. And I think there's a great hope in that. And I find that to be incredibly powerful because there's another part of your story that I really want to dive into and I really want to understand. And that's this concept of coming out of Mormonism because we can't talk about your story without also talking about that. So, can you talk to me a little bit about what that was like? You said that you grew up Mormon. You talked about, having all these kids and everything, but what was it like being a part of that? I'm going to call it a religion because I don't know. I know what other word is used to describe it, and I'm not going to use that word on the
Right.
on here. So I will use the word religion. So what was it like growing up as part of that religion, but ultimately making the decision to leave?
Right. So I grew up in a home where there was a lot of dysfunction and abuse, even as a child. But to the outside world, we, portrayed a perfect Mormon family look. And behind closed doors, it wasn't that, at all. And so it was very confusing as a child. And then you go to church, and my whole life was controlled by the church. I was at meetings several times a week and, youth group on Wednesdays and primary, or this is on Saturdays, and churches for many hours, as we all know, on Sundays. And I always want to be kind that there are very, very good, kind, lovely people in this religion. And so, with that being said, there's a lot of darkness too. And the foundation of the church is based on lies, and it's a foundation that's on God's word and his truth. And so where you have that, you open a lot of doors, and you open a lot of footholds for Satan to get into people's hearts. And we're not testing every spirit there. We're not, it's I'm trying to be careful because one thing when I first found out the truth, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's all lies. Joseph Smith is a liar. He's a sociopath. He's a pedophile. He's a womanizer. He's a human
Yeah.
trafficker. The church, he's a racist. He's a white supremacist. He's an occult leader. He's a pathological liar. The whole story that I grew up believing that he was tarred and feathered and he was just a martyr and he was killed at Calgary, at the prison, at Liberty Jail. None of that's true. He was shooting and killing people. I mean, I was angry because I thought my whole life was revolved around I call it a religion of rules. So I was raised
Uh-huh.
on a religion of rules. It was a rule to do this and that, and what I ate and what I drank and what I prayed and what I listened to, what I wore, the clothing I wore, and the garments and the temple and the baptisms for the dead and there's so many rules. But I never met Jesus. I just followed a bunch of rules. And so I never ever felt like I was good enough. There was so much shame and guilt that's why there's this perfectionism, this perpetual perfectionism in Mormonism. I'm trying to say perfectionism and Mormonism at the same time, but that's why there's this perpetual perfectionism because you're never going to be good enough because the goalposts just continuously move and the doctrine changes constantly too. And if a church's doctrine constantly changes and the sleeves on the garments constantly change and and now blacks can't have the priesthood, but now they can. I mean, if that's constantly changing, that's a pretty good sign that there isn't a firm foundation of your gospel. So, anyways, when I first came out, I came out swinging, and I apologize to anybody I offended back then, but that wasn't my purpose. My purpose was I was kind of mad. I was mad that I had been ruled with this invisible prison of guilt and shame for decades because I never felt like I was good enough. And, the abuse I suffered in the church too. Um, there was a lot of abuse in the church growing up too. So I ended up running away from home when I was just almost 16. I celebrated my 16th birthday at the new home I was at. So I ran away from home because it was just very abusive. But I went to school in Utah. I went and I worked a couple jobs, got myself into school in Utah. And I moved out there thinking, okay, this is where I'll meet my Mormon husband. I'll be a good Mormon. I left with a Mormon home, but I still believe it's true. And I'll go on and live my good Mormon life. And so then, like I said, I came back, I married the guy who passed away. And then the ex-husband actually wasn't Mormon. And I married him. And I still believe the Mormon church was true. And then when we got divorced, and I took my kids, I got them baptized. We went on Christmas. We did the primary programs, but I also was married to a man that wasn't a Mormon. So, and he came to a couple of their little primary singing things and stuff. But when we got divorced, I was like, I'm going all back in. So I did the temple, the Mormon garments, all of that, and no drinking, no coffee, nothing. And made my kids go to, they still give me a hard time. They're like, you made us go to all this Mormon stuff and Eagle Scouts, this and that. And I'm like, okay, but it's kind of good for you. Like, they do have a lot of great programs for the youth. And so that's something I will say about them, but it can also be used as a trap, right? Well, because Mormonism isn't just a religion, it's also a culture. And so they've
Mhm.
got all these great programs for children, which is wonderful. But if some people stay in the religion for the culture, for the community, for the kids' programs, you have to kind of look at that because rat poison is 99% food. It's just 1% poison. So why do the rats go? For the food. They're hungry, right? So if you go for certain things, you do need to be careful about that. But I ended up, like I was telling you earlier, I was a big advocate working in the field of anti-human trafficking, and because when you're in that, most of the time you'll run into SRA, which is satanic ritual abuse, and a lot of occult practices, and that's why they traffic a lot of children. And sadly enough, church organizations, including the Mormon Church, are up at the top of the list of organizations that traffic children. I think a lot of people know that. So, and the Mormon church hides a lot of sexual abuse. They use their own attorneys with in-house. They have their own Mormon hotline to call if there's SA, and you have to call the Bruce R. McConkie hotline instead of the actual police. They go in and they cover a lot up, and it really, really bothers me. And so I started to see all of this, and I saw the similarities of the rituals that I was doing in the temple, and I thought, why does this look just like the Freemason rituals that I'm watching when I'm studying all the occult practices? And I thought it was really strange. And that's what triggered me to do all the research. And when I did all the research and I prayed about it and I really used sharp discernment, and I found out that it was just lie upon lie upon lie. And I felt so much grief. It feels like a death. It feels like you're mourning a death and you feel angry because you feel betrayed and you feel lied to and you feel deceived. And it's funny because it's very similar to how you feel when you come out of an abusive relationship. The same way I felt coming out of a high control religion is a high conflict relationship. They use the same tactics and manipulations, the same gaslighting. Like it's the way they use a lot of the same tactics is very interesting. And the grief and the process of healing coming out of it is very similar. Yeah, I did that and I came out like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know. And I think I upset some people, and that wasn't my intention. I just wanted people to know that it wasn't true. So I want to
Yeah.
come across in a way that's a little more loving and I guess just give it a little more grace because it isn't true. But I also understand what it's like to have your family all tied into it. It's part of your whole, like a lot of times everything from your job or your work and your friends, your families, your neighbors, your community. Usually the tentacles are tied into all of that. And it's really, really hard for people to break free from it. Also, we know that mind programming, conditioning, I don't want to say brainwashing because people get very upset by that. And I understand.
Right.
It feels a little offensive. I get it because it makes people feel dumb, like they've been deceived. And nobody wants to feel that way. But listen, if I can be deceived by a church and by boyfriends and stuff, then I can put my tail between my legs. I can eat crow pie and, what is it? What do they say? You can eat crow or whatever. Yeah. I can do that because I've had to do it a few times now. So yeah,
Mm.
it's really difficult for people to break free from it though. It is.
Mhm. You described it as a religion of rules. You talked about it being controlling. And so you know what it's like to be controlled by religion. You know what it's like to be controlled by men, for lack of a better way of putting it. Lindy, what is it like serving Jesus, knowing that you'll never be controlled by him, knowing that you'll never be manipulated by him, knowing that he's never going to intimidate you, knowing that no one is going to love you more than he is going to love you. No one's going to love you better than he does. Knowing that the only thing that he asks of you, and I'm going to quote his words here, his words were simply this, and I love the way that The Chosen paints this, and it's simply this: come to me, all those who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give them rest. What is it like having been controlled almost your whole life, and yet now you are in love with someone who will never control you, never dominate you? The only thing that you need to do is surrender yourself to him and make yourself available. What's that like for you?
It's life changing. Literally, it has changed my life and it's so beautiful and it's so simple. Like he
Mm,
will never lie. God never lies. And he never, ever, ever breaks a promise. Ever. His
oh,
word will never be broken. Ever.
mm,
But who is the father of lies? And I always compare now. I go, okay, that spirit there that I was dealing with is of the enemy. He's the father of lies. He's confusion. He's here to kill, steal, and destroy, right? That's what those relationships and those religions are there to do and bring you away from the truth, right? He stands
mm,
firm. His word never changes. He is who he was yesterday, today, and will always be forever lasting. He never breaks a promise. He never tells a lie. And it's just like, wow, if you stand firm on his foundation and you trust in him, and also you can pray to him. Now I have the best dating filter there ever has been, right? Like I go to him and I say, remove this person if they're not for me, if they're not from you. And he does. And he shows you, show me the intent of this person's heart. And he does. I mean, what better way? I still talk to my girlfriends about dating and stories. They want to hear it, but he's the best person to go to. And now I have
mm.
that as my measuring stick. Like that's my litmus test right there is him. And he
Yeah.
treats his daughters like princesses, royalty, and he says we're more precious than rubies. And yeah, so any man has to live up to that. So
Yeah. Well, you know what? No one is a better matchmaker, but no one is a better sifter than he is. So he is the one that orchestrates the best relationships, but he's also the ones that can end those that are destructive. And that's one of the realities that I have come to understand a little more forcefully than I would have liked to have understood it, but he has ultimate control. You know what? One of my favorite titles of Jesus in all of scripture is a title that does not get a lot of talk, and it's found in the book of Hebrews. And the author says, let us look unto Jesus, the author. He
yeah,
is the author, which, if you think of an author writes stories, an author writes books. And as
yeah,
the author, he has the ability to write our stories. And so many times I have tried to take the pen out of his hand and write my own
yeah.
story. So many times
Same.
I've tried to, and it's like something that you said in your conversation with Lisa. You talked about like this intuition, and that you should have followed it, and it might have kept you from making some of the decisions that you made. I'm right there with you. I know that there's been plenty of times when I felt something was right. I felt something was off. And it's really the author. And that's why I love Brandon Lake's new song with Nick Jonas. If you haven't heard it yet, It is a great song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is his latest release, Brandon Lake with Nick Jonas, and I think it's just called The Author, but it is centered around that verse. And two of my favorite names of Jesus in all of Scripture we've talked about today, and that is the God who sees, and that is the author. And so, Lindy, I think there's probably one more question that I want to ask you for now, because I think I would love to do a part two with you, but there's another question that I have. You've talked about things that you're passionate about. You talked about one word that I absolutely love, and that is advocate. Interestingly enough, that is a name of Jesus. Jesus is
It
known as an
is.
advocate. So
Yeah.
he is the author and is the advocate. And you are one that advocates for mental health. You're one that advocates for those that have been human trafficked. So, what is it that made you so passionate about these causes? Is it attributed to your relationship with Jesus and him just placing this compassion and this passion in you? Or is it just something that you've always had a heart for these causes and now you had the ability to rise up as an advocate?
Well, I think it's interesting because I was like, wait, how did it begin? But it definitely began because I did experience abuse as a child. And so it's really hard for me to see any child that it's a hard part. The hard part about being a highly sensitive person, you can call it an empath, whatever you want to call it. A lot of times it's someone who has probably been abused. And so they feel it when other people experience it. What I didn't know yet was boundaries. And so at my own expense, I'd be like, I want to stop it. I want to help everybody. I don't want anyone to. I was so uncomfortable with anybody experiencing any kind of pain or discomfort at my own expense. So I wanted to stop anything. And I had to learn boundaries because even when I was deep in my advocacy against human trafficking, I got really stressed out. I wasn't sleeping. And I noticed that I wasn't being as good of a mother to my own children as I could be because I was so involved in these cases and letting it get to me. And I noticed, I said, okay, we need to have boundaries here because my own ministry starts in my home. Right. And so I really had to learn how to have boundaries around my empathy because it had a lot to do with why I ended up in these relationships too. And
Mhm.
so they would tell me their horror stories or something. And I'd be like, oh, I just want to fix them or help them. And that was
Yep.
something I had to really learn that I was doing and how predators kind of work. They see the way you empathize with them when they start telling you, oh, my ex wife is doing this and I'm so broken
Yeah.
because of this. It's like, oh, let me come help you and fix you. And they go, oh, this is working. And then they keep manipulating you that way. And so I thought I was just being a good person, but I really lacked
Mhm.
the boundaries around that. I had to learn that. But I think it was the experience I had as a child with abuse. And then, yeah, being widowed and that pain and being a single, I was like a single mom and it was hard and painful. And then going through a lot of people go through divorce, men and women. And I know firsthand how painful going through divorce can be. It was heartbreaking. And learning how to co parent and learning how to get through that grief is so difficult. And a lot of people are still struggling with that. And they'll ask me, like, you're in such a good place with your ex-husband. You speak of him nicely and you guys get along well. How do you do that? And I'm like, trust me, this did not happen overnight. It took Jesus working on my heart, me putting my kids first above anything else, aside my selfish, wanting to be angry, kind of those feelings. I have two babies in heaven with Jesus.
Mhm.
That was really hard on me too. Like, I didn't bring that up because that'll make me cry, but I have 2 babies in heaven with Jesus. I always wanted a girl, and I'm always like, one of them I'm sure was a girl. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was 2
Mhm.
more boys, but, I've been through that. I've been through illness. Have 14 different illnesses. I've been really sick.
Mhm.
I lost my dad right around the same time you did. I lost my dad
Mhm.
in 2021. Um, that grief of losing a parent is totally different from other kinds of loss and grief. I lost my best
Mhm.
friend. And so I think that for me, I know, and I also told you I struggled with mental health. A lot of what I went through in those last 6 years brought me into a lot of, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. So I had like
Mhm.
dissociative, I had anxiety, depression, and then I dealt with suicidal ideation. And I also battled eating disorders since I was 12 years old. All of these things give me so much compassion and and I struggle because I just want to help everyone and fix it all and make it all go away today. Like I don't want anyone to suffer or have any more pain as of now. Like I'm like, come on, God. And I've even struggled with God because I've struggled with why does he allow so much pain? Look at my life. Why did he
Mhm.
allow? I remember being in my garage and being like a teenager or like in early 20s and my eating disorders were taking over my life. And I would just cry and be like, God, please, like, heal my eating, like, heal me from this, take it from me. And he didn't. It took 15 more years before I was healed from that. And I don't know why he
Mm,
allowed a lot of the things that I've been through, because he's allowed a lot in my life. But I know that he can use me and my story to show others that if I can get through all of that, you can get through it too with him. I would not be here
mm,
today if it weren't for him. I wouldn't.
mm,
So I know that sometimes people feel, when they feel that someone really understands it, and they're like, they don't feel like they're just being patronized by somebody, just like a therapist on their couch or somebody saying, "Oh, I know how you feel. Just write me a check and tell me how you feel again next week." Like, no, I know the
yeah.
heartbreak. I can sit with you and give you space. I can empathize with you without you even saying what you went through. If you went through narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, losing a parent, I know what you're going through. I know if you're struggling with eating disorders. I know what it's like to have it take over your life. I know if
Mm,
you're struggling with anxiety and suicidal thoughts. I know what you're
mm.
feeling. You don't even need to say anything else. And so I think there's a lot that God can do with that. And I know that. And I know He is going to do a lot with it. And my whole story is for Him to use.
I'm trying to remember the last time that I've met someone who I really believe their story and everything that they've been through truly makes them an advocate for what a lot of people have gone through. And I love what it says of Jesus, that he is our advocate. And he's our advocate with the Father. He's even our advocate with others, and he works behind the scenes. You said earlier, he hears conversations that we don't hear. And even now, as you and I are having this conversation, he's advocating for us and he's working all things together for good. And I absolutely love it because I don't know if I've met somebody that has been through as much as you have and can truly sit there and say, I know what it's like, more than just I understand or I get it. Though that language that we use when we really don't know what else to say, when we really don't get it or we really don't understand it, we just patronize with other people. And it's this false empathy that I think a lot of people operate in, but that's not your story. He has woven together something incredibly beautiful with your life and with your experiences and what he's done. So I watched all four, I believe there were four. I watched all four of your car chronicles that I saw on your Instagram page. And I didn't watch all of them, but I watched enough of them to help prepare me for this conversation. So here is probably my final question, because I want to do a part two with you in the future. I want to have another conversation. But to wrap this one up, if you were to treat this as another car chronicle, if you were to look directly into this screen and if you were to give any type of encouragement to anyone that is hurting, anybody that's suffering, anybody that's struggling, anybody that is doubting, and you were to give them the words of Jesus, or if you were to give them something that you feel the Holy Spirit would want them to say, what would you say?
I would say that scripture is like a healing balm over the soul, and just, it is miraculous what sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling heavy and I'm feeling brokenhearted, if you just sit down and you read Psalm 23 or you read Psalm 91, just read it over yourself. And your nervous, it's crazy all the nervous system resetting you learn to do in all of our health world nowadays, but it's true. And I
Yeah.
will feel a tangible difference in my nervous system, and my body will calm down. Just read his word. His word is his truth. And like we said earlier, his promises are always faithful. And he is your refuge. He is your safe place. He will cover you with his wings. And he will encamp angels around you. And he does. And he knows every hair in your head. His thoughts of you are more than the sands on the beach. He keeps every tear in a jar. I'm going to cry. He really has changed my life and healed me. And, um, they say, so typically with my amount of trauma, I shouldn't have made it past my 40th birthday. I should have been addicted to drugs, killed probably by a boyfriend, or like suicide. And I'm here to tell you that he numbers my days. He numbers my years. He is the author and finisher of my faith. And for someone that's been through so much brokenness, and I could be so hateful towards some people too, some people that have really hurt me, even the really awful, evil person that did all the abuse And when he got online and started his online attack on me, and there was like even a couple people that kind of like, evil attracts evil and it brings that spiritual presence up in them. So they kind of wanted to join in and attack me with him. And there's so many people that I wanted to hold on to hate for. And I've been delivered from all of that. And you can be too. So I think that God's using me for living proof. If I can forgive those people and be delivered from that pain and that hurt and that grief and give it all to Him. And when you understand what unforgiveness does to you and the way it attaches to your own soul and spirit, and you feel free from it and you feel the difference, you're like, okay, I don't even want it anymore. Like, take it, just take it, give it to God because He knows what to do with it. But life is hard and there is a lot of pain. And most people will suffer some kind of grief or pain. It's hard to get away from it. Some people have more than others, but I would never ever want to go through any grief or any trial or any pain again without Him. It's night and
Mm,
day the difference of going through something hard with Him or without Him.
mm,
You can get through anything with Him,
mm.
anything.
There is, you referenced it, and I can't think of a more fitting way to end our conversation. There is a Christian artist. She's fairly new, Leanna Crawford. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but
So,
well, when we get off the recording, there's a couple songs that I'm going to send you. But you referenced something, and her song is called Psalm 23, and she begins her song by using these words: anxiety hates Psalm 23.
yeah,
And I just want to let that sit for a few seconds. Anxiety hates Psalm 23. And so, because I believe that anxiety hates Psalm 23, I can't think of a better way to end this recording than to read Psalm 23. So, this is what I'm going to do. So, Psalm 23 is only 6 verses, but this is what it says: The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. Anxiety hates Psalm 23. And so I want to leave everybody that would watch this or everybody that would listen to this with the words of Psalm 23, and really allow those words to resonate with you and put your name there. The Lord is Lindy's shepherd. The Lord is Stephen's shepherd. Lyndi shall not want. He leads Lyndi through the valley of the shadow of death. Put your name in there and read that chapter with your name and your story and your experiences and your brokenness and your trauma. Read it with all of that in mind and understand that He can lead you beside still waters. He can make you to lie down in green pastures. He can restore your soul. Goodness and mercy can follow you all the days of your life. You don't have to be defined by what you've been through. You don't have to have an identity around your trauma. You don't have to have an identity around your wounds. You don't have to have an identity around your brokenness. You can have an identity that's found in Him. Lyndi has found that identity. I have found that identity. We're continuing to discover that identity. And it is my prayer, and I know it's Lyndi's prayer, that you experience that in your own life. And if you are struggling, and if you are hurting, and if you are broken, send a message. Reach out to me. I won't speak for Lyndi, but reach out to me, and
reach out to me. Yes.
and and we can encourage you and we will pray for you. Or if you need to do nothing more than to just vent and you just need a listening ear, then by all means go ahead and do so. And my prayer is that you experience your own testimony and you experience him as the God who sees you, and you experience him as the author of your story, and you experience him as the advocate for you and what you have been through. And so, Lyndi, I want to say thank you for your time. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I have enjoyed it a lot, and this is a formal invitation for a part two. You could have said no. Apparently, I reached out to you when you had your 300,000 friends,
Yeah.
and here we are with a much smaller platform, but yet we got connected. And so, thank you so much for your time and your willingness to have the conversation.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it too. And I even loved that you went on and told the story of Ruth and Boaz. I loved that
Mm,
unexpected part too. So, and I think that, what was it when you told the God who sees? I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was over here like, come on, Stephen. What a
mm,
word. That was a word right there that you gave about him seeing and how he's seen me and everything. I was like, oh, that's a word right there. So, yeah. I
mm,
truly believe you were given a word right there for me
mm,
even. So I'm
mm.
like, I'm gonna go read and about him being, what did you say that he sees us? What did you call him again? The
Yes,
seat that he sees?
so the name is El
The God
Roi.
who
So
sees.
the God who sees it. I
Which
will
I've
send you.
heard, but I don't know if I kind of just, it's one of those things I skipped over. I love like
Mhm.
Rafa and like healer, all that. Because when I was sick, I was like, he's my Rafa. But like the God who sees that, I'm gonna go study that tonight. I've got my homework.
Yes, well, I will send you both songs. If you're not familiar with where that passage is, I will send you that when we get off. But yes, he is the God who sees you, and he is the God who sees me.